Hello students, today we're doing lesson 5.2 and this is on divisibility test. So divisibility means whether or not you can divide a number by another number. So we're going to learn how to tell without actually dividing whether or not a number can be divided by a certain number. Okay, and we have a couple of rules that we're going to learn. So we've got 3 that are really easy, but first I'm going to go through the numbers that we're going to learn first. So I'm going to show you how to tell if it can be divided by 2, can be divided by 3, 4, 5, 6, not 7 or 8, but 9 and 10. So I'm going to teach you rules for all these numbers, but we're not going to go in order. But go ahead and write it on your paper like this. You can skip every other line so that you have enough room to write. So how can you tell if a number can be divided by 2? That's an easy one. When I ask the class that, they say you can tell if it can be divided by 2 if it's an even number. And what does it mean to be an even number? It means that it ends with a 0, 2, 4, 6, or 8. Okay, so like for example, if I had the number 358, I can tell that that's divisible by 2 because it ends in an 8. So I don't, you don't need to write this, but I don't need to go over here and go, okay, can I divide this by 2? This is all the work you would do if you were saying, oh, can I divide this number by 2? Let me check. And then you would do all this work and say, okay, I get no remainder. That means I can divide it by 2. It's divisible by 2. So divisible by a number means that you're going to have no remainder when you divide it. Well, I don't want to do all that work. So I want to figure out if I can divide by 2 just by an easy test. So that's why these are called divisibility tests. And the test is whether or not it's an even number. So any even number can be divided by 2. Okay, we're going to skip down to 5. So the way to tell if something can be divided by 5 is if it ends with a 5 or a 0. So if it ends with a 5 or a 0, that means it can be divided by 5. So for example, if I have 185, that number can be divided by 5 because it ends in a 5. Or if I had 1,320, that ends in a 0, so that can be divided by 5. Okay, and then the last one that's one of these easy ones is 10. So how can you tell if something can be divided by 10? You're probably saying it or you're thinking it if it ends with a 0. Okay, so any number that ends with a 0 can be divided by 10. So for example, 350, that can be divided by 10 because it has a 0 on the end. Okay, I could give you a super long number that has like 10 digits on it. As long as it ends with the 0, you can divide it by 10. So those are the 3 easy ones. All you're looking at is the last number to see what it ends in. And we're going to do some more examples in a minute. Actually, I want you to scroll up and let's do some examples. So example 1 in your book. I'm sorry, you're not going to scroll up. You're going to go down to the next part. Okay, so they want you to tell whether or not these 3 numbers can be divided by 2, 5, or 10. Okay, so A is going to be 254. B is 875. And C is 640. So we're just going to put out by the side what numbers it can be divided by. So look at 254. For all 3 of the tests we just learned, we look at the last number. So that 4 tells me that it's even, so it can be divided by 2. Can it be divided by 5? Well, look at the rules for 5. If it ends with a 5 or a 0. Well, this one does not end with either one of those, so it cannot be divided by 5. And then the last one, 10, says if it ends with a 0. Well, this number does not, so 2 is the only number it can be divided by. Okay, let's look at B, 875. Can it be divided by 2? No, because it's not an even number. And remember, if you don't know the even numbers, it's 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So this one ends with a 5, so that is not going to work. Okay, what about 5? Can it be divided by 5? If it ends with a 5 or a 0, well, it ends with a 5, so we're going to say yes, that's 5. But it is not divisible by 10 because it doesn't end with a 0. Okay, let's look at the last one, 640. Can it be divided by 2? Look at the last number. Remember, even numbers are if they divided by 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So this is a 0, so yes, it can be divided by 2. What about 5? 5 says if it ends with a 5 or a 0, it's a 0. So this can be divided by 5. And the last one, can it be divided by 10? Yes, because it ends with a 0. So for C, 640, it can be divided by 2, 5, and 10. It has all three of them it can be divided by. Okay, let's go back up here and learn a couple more. We're going to learn about 3 and 9. So the way that you tell if it can be divided by 3 is if the sum, okay, and remember, what does sum mean? Sum means the answer to an addition problem. So if the sum, so we're going to be adding here. If the sum of the digits is divisible by 3. Okay, so if the sum, so we're going to add the digits together and we're going to see if that's divisible by 3. So for example, if I have 123, I'm going to take 1 plus 2 plus 3. Those are the digits. And I'm going to add them together. That makes 6. And now you say, is 6 divisible by 3? Yes. Then that means 123 is divisible by 3. Okay? Let's do 9. Down here. This one is similar to 3. It says if the sum of the digits are divisible by 3. I'm sorry, that's not supposed to say are, it's supposed to be is. If the sum is divisible by 3. I'm sorry, I said that wrong again. If the sum of the digits is divisible by 9, okay, because this is for 9. So for example, if I had 180, I would do 1 plus 8 plus 0. That equals 9. 9 is divisible by 9, so 180 is divisible by 9. Okay, we'll do some more of those down here. So let's do example 2 is for 3 or 9. They want you to look at these examples and say whether or not they are divisible by 3 and if they're divisible by 9. So A is going to be 438, and I'm going to put the B over here. B is going to be 387. So for 3 and 9, you're going to add the digits. So I'm going to add 4 plus 3 plus 8. So that's 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 8 is 15. So can 15 be divided by 3? Yes, that means this is divisible by 3. Can it be divided by 9? Can 15 be divided by 9? No. So the only one that it's divisible by is 3. So 438 is divisible by 3. If I went over here and did division by 3, I would not get a remainder. I would have no remainder left. So you don't want to have to do all this work. See, that's a lot of work to do to see if something's divisible by 3. So instead of dividing, we're doing the test. Okay, let's go over here to 387. I'm going to add those digits, 3 plus 8 plus 7. So 3 plus 8 is 11, plus 7 is 18. So now once I've added the digits, I say, is that divisible by 3 or 9? Okay, so for 18, it is divisible by 3, so 3 is going to be one of the divisible. And is 18 divisible by 9? Yes, it is. So 3 and 9 work for 387. Okay, let's go back up here and finish what these are. And your book does not actually, oh, it does tell you the divisibility rule for 4, but it tells you in your homework. So it isn't in the notes, but I'm going to tell you the rule for 4s. Okay, and it is if the last 2 digits are divisible by 4. So not adding them up, it doesn't say the sum, just the last 2 digits are divisible by 4. Okay, and we'll do a sample of that one in a minute. And for 6, it's if it's divisible by 2 and I'm putting it in all caps, 3. Okay, it has to be divisible by both of those. Okay, so let's show an example for those. This is example 3. And this one says, is 468 divisible by 6? So we're going to say yes or no. So how do we tell for 6? Well, for 6, the rule is if it's divisible by 2 and 3. So we have to ask ourselves, is this number divisible by 2 and 3? Well, we have to know the divisibility rules. For 2, it needs to be even. Is it even? Yes. So it's divisible by 2. For 3, we need to add the numbers. So we do 4 plus 6 plus 8, and that equals 18. Is 18 divisible by 3? Yes. So if it's divisible by both 2 and 3, then it is divisible by 6, and our answer is yes. I hope y'all can read cursive, because that is cursive. Okay, if I wanted to do that is a number divisible by 4, since we just did that one, let me think of a number really quick. Okay, I'm going to give you a super long number. Let's say, well, not super long. Say is 73,516 divisible by 4. Okay, so for the 4, the rule for the 4 is if the last 2 digits are divisible by 4. So if these 2 digits are divisible by 4, then this is a yes. So is 16 divisible by 4? Yes, because 16 can be divided by 4. So that answer is yes. Now, if I had a number like 73,596, my last 2 digits are 96. And that one's not one you can just say, most people can't just say, oh yeah, 96 divisible by 4. So you might have to go off to the side and say, oh, let me check and see if it's divisible by 4. And when you do the work, you say, oh, yes, it is, because there's no remainders. So 96 is divisible by 4. That means 73,596 is divisible by 4. Okay, so all these rules you will need to memorize. But you pretty much already know 2s and 5s and 10s. Those are pretty easy, right? Everybody pretty much knew those. 3 and 9 are similar, so those will be easy to remember. 4's not really hard at all because you just need to know if the last 2 are divisible by. And 6 is easy because it says it's divisible by 2 and 3. Why 2 and 3? Because 2 times 3 equals 6. So that's an easy way to remember that. So we'll be doing a little bit of practice on these, and hopefully you'll have them memorized by the time of the test. On worksheets, even on review, you can look back at your notes and see these rules. It's just on the test when you have to have it memorized. Okay, and we will be using these rules later on, so you have to have them memorized. Actually, we use them a lot later on. So make sure that you get them memorized and you remember them for later lessons. Okay, that's all.